Getting your first job as a developer is not necessarily the easiest thing to do in the world, and it's not just for developers, this is for anything. You're coming out of school with no experience, not really knowing how you can set yourself apart. You sort of want to set yourself up to have some things that you can show that you know what you're doing, but you just don't know how to do that. I know when I was teaching in the classroom, it was something that a lot of students really would worry about, and they didn't really know what they could do to show that they had experience without actually having experience, if that makes any sense at all. And for me, it's been a long time since I had to find my first job, and it's not something that I have a lot of experience with, but I have a friend, Aderson, who has lots of advice on that front. He has started a project called Bridge to help bridge that gap and to help people who are currently studying to set themselves up for success when they are looking for that first job. And so this is an interview with Aderson where we talk a lot about gaining experience while you're still a student, as well as a few other ideas and tips and tricks and different things you can start doing to set yourself up for success when it is time to start looking for a job. So let's go and dive right into it.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Kevin. Hello. My name is Aderson Oliveira, and I usually say that I'm a professor, a instructor, a college teacher, and I love teaching. And because of that, I found a way to help my graduate students to find their first experience in the job market. And that's what I've been building lately with brridge.com, which is my company. But again, I'm at the core a teacher.
That's awesome. And just a little bit curious of getting into from doing that transition from teacher to now having Bridge in place, and just like how, was it seeing what your students were doing, or was it something else that just sort of inspired you to get started with Bridge?
Actually, because of my teaching, I try to engage a lot my students, Kevin. And one of the ways I created a Facebook group for current students and former students as well. And at some point I said, I want to help them more. And I just decided to ask the question, what's your biggest trouble? What's your biggest problem? More related to career. And unanimously, they said, getting their first job. And I said, okay, I cannot hire all of them. I have my company, but I cannot hire all of them. I cannot refer all of them. How can I help them in a more effective way? And I said, let me put together a few groups of people that I can coach them within a real project that they can put in their resumes, and they can say, hey, I have some experience. I was part of that project, and I did this, and that in that project. They can talk about them confidently, because that's one of the problems that they face with interviews, is that they don't have anything to talk about. They have some experience at college and boot camps as well, and if you are a self-taught developer, you may have tried some projects there, but it's different when you try to do something as part of a group, as part of something that just didn't came out of your head, So that's how it got born, how Bridge got born, Kevin.
Awesome. Yeah. And I can definitely, when I was teaching, definitely one of the biggest struggles, or the one, people would get close to the end and then all of a sudden be like, wait, I don't have anything to sort of stand out, or, I'm trying to find a job. And so, with that, if you are a student that's either, maybe you're early on, or you're approaching the end, or you've already graduated and you're sitting there going, I don't have any experience. I'm just curious, what could somebody do to then get that experience? Because it's really hard, I think, in those situations.
So I would say that, first of all, try to avoid waiting until you are done. Because when you are done, it's the time that you need to reap the rewards of some seeds that you have planted before. Now, again, even if it's late for you, that's fine. Doesn't matter where you are in this cycle, but the points that I'll be making, they are valid wherever you are. I think that there are a few things that you can do to minimize the fact that you don't have experience. You have to force yourself to have some experience. And how can you do that? The question is, now I have a good friend that asked me, what is the recipe? Tell me what I should do. So there are different things. You can, for example, you can volunteer. And actually, I just put a link aside, Kevin, to share about that one. And you can share in the notes of the show.
But I'll put it in the description. Yeah.
To volunteer, there's a great website called charityvillage.com. Again, it will be in the show notes, that you can find volunteer positions. Again, volunteers, there are plenty of non-profit organizations out there that they need people with your skills. Just getting started, again, it's good for them, it's good for you, because you need the experience, they need the volunteer. So that's one, being a volunteer. And there are a few other ones that I can start covering, Kevin, but just want to pause to see if you have anything there.
Yeah, no, right away, I do think that's a good option. And I know some people are sometimes hesitant to do free work sometimes. And you hear these things of, especially if you're a student, but I think it's one of those things where like you shouldn't undervalue yourself. But if you're doing charity work and it's for charitable organizations, it's a little bit different than just doing work for free for somebody. So definitely, like, I don't think people should shy away from that being like, oh, I can't do it for free. They always tell me to like get the value for what I'm doing and stuff like that. And I think in those types of situations, it makes a lot of sense too, because you're both getting a benefit from it. And I think that's always how you have to look at it, is you're doing it for a charity and an organization that needs the help. And you're also getting that experience that you wouldn't have otherwise had. And yeah, so.
Actually, on that point, Kevin, I have my theory here.
Mm-hmm.
You either charge well or you do it for free.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So again, don't undercharge yourself. So again, either go full rate or don't charge.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't charge, it might be for cause. It might be, again, I just want to connect with other options here. It might be for an open source project. Mm-hmm. There are plenty of open source projects there on GitHub that you can find. And again, I'll be sharing some additional links that will help you to get started with open source, because open source is intimidating at first. And if you don't go carefully, you're gonna shy away very quickly. So there are a few links that will help you to get started with beginners friendly open source projects as well. So that's another one, open source projects. Another one, hackathons. There are plenty of hackathons happening that you can expose yourself to a group of people. You can even connect with people. Again, as part of getting started, is connecting with people, it's building your network. So hackathons are a great way to do that. Initially, I thought that hackathons would be for people that knew a lot already. But no, there are hackathons for beginners as well, for people that are just getting started and they want to expose themselves. So again, open source projects, volunteer positions, and hackathons. 3 potential avenues that you can get experience,
Yeah. And circling a little bit back to open source, as you mentioned, it can be a little bit intimidating to get started with it. So you said that you have some resources that we'll put the links in the description for that for sure, to help people get there. On sort of that note of, say you get to one and you're looking through these beginner-friendly open source projects or pull requests that you can work on. Do you have any advice for like choosing the right one for you? Is there ways of sort of identifying something that you might be more comfortable with, or even just finding a project that you'd like to be involved in? Or do you just choose as many as you can and just try and start working on them?
Okay, so the good thing with the resource that I'll be sharing, Kevin, is that it's a resource to give. It's interesting that it's a GitHub page showing, it's almost like a directory of open source projects that are friendly for beginners, because projects can be tagged, and there are things like beginners friendly, or there are some other tags as well that point that this particular repo or open source project is friendly for beginners. So this directory that I'm going to provide, it's broken down by technology. So you can align whatever you are studying, whether you want to focus on Node.js, on Java, C#, whatever it is that you want to focus. There is a section there for beginners friendly open source projects around that technology. And for each project, it gives a little description about what that project is about. Then again, you can say, okay, so this might be something that I would be interested, Again, you read a little bit about the project, and then it may click with you. And the other resource that I'll be sharing is how you can get started. Once you pick the project, how you get started, how you do, how you make create a branch, how you do a pull request, what is it that people are looking for. So again, that will help you to filter, because if you just go github.com, you're going to be overwhelmed because there's just so much there. So again, those resources, they will narrow the options for you for the ones that are more beginners friendly, that will give you a nice light introduction to, and hold your hand to get you started.
That's great. And I think that could also be a nice, just because you're getting started there to get experience, it's always a good thing to be contributing toward open source. So it doesn't have to be something that you stop doing once you finally land that first job, or as you get a little bit more experience, because we need all sorts, anyone who can contribute to open source is doing a good thing, I think.
And that, Kevin, as well, if you allow me to interject there a little bit, that as well helps you to build what I think it's another pillar of getting yourself, your first position there, which is your digital footprint. Contribute to open source, where we start to build your portfolio, your history there. A potential future employer will check you online, and he or she will see, okay, the individual is contributing to open source, and he or she is contributing in a consistent base. There was not just a spur of the moment in the past. No, there's some consistency there. That's why it's interesting to do that frequently, consistently as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's not, all of a sudden you hit a certain month and there's this huge spike and then it falls back down. It's more if you can start early on and don't overwhelm yourself with it, but continually be involved in it, it probably helps look a little bit better than just, I had to rush and get all of this done at once to try and show that I can do something. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so just talking also, we were talking about hackathons, open source, and on volunteer work. A lot of the time you see people putting together, sort of trying to put together a portfolio, and they're just trying to find their own type of things to put in there. So one thing I always tell people is don't put, if you followed one of my videos, don't put the finished result in there, or if you did a front-end mentor project, don't put that in there, because it might be something that a lot of other people have done. So it's more of, if you followed a tutorial, anybody could do that. And then there's also personal projects as well that people will try and sort of develop. Is that something else that would be worth it, or is it better to have sort of experience, more real world dealing with teams and things like that?
Ideally, yes. Ideally, you should seek something that will expose you to a group of people. That, again, you can leverage your connections there, you can build your connections, but it might be an option as well. And I will be sharing also a few links that will give people ideas of personal projects. Now, here's one thing that I'm strongly biased towards, is somehow, and it's not easy, it's not something that trivial, but somehow try to find a mentor. And I'll tell you this, it's very overwhelming to be doing those things for the first time. You don't know where to start, you don't know what to do, you don't know the kinds of roadblocks that you might be facing. So if you can connect with a mentor, that would be great. Now, the question becomes, how do you find a mentor? That's the obvious question. So let's talk a little bit about that then. I mentioned about hackathons. So hackathon, depending on the format of the hackathon, you might have people there organizing. Well, you definitely have people there organizing, but some of those hackathons, they have mentorship opportunities as well. I'll mention about a particular hackathon that I'm a big fan, and I'll mention that in the links as well. It's called Mintbean. Mintbean is a great organization based in Toronto, Canada, and they have constant hackathons for beginners. They have a great network, a great Discord channel that people come together to talk about their problems, talk about career as well. And that is a great place to potentially connect with someone that can help you out. A mentor can help you to get a job, can help you to overcome the roadblocks that you will face, that can say, hey, you are going to the left here, come a little bit closer to the right, can guide you better. It's not easy. It's not something that you're going to drop by and you can say, can you be my mentor? You have to build that relationship. It's like the way that you build a friendship. You don't come to someone and say, can you be my friend? You don't do that. So you have to approach as how can I help this person? And eventually you can connect, and you can be helped as well. So think about a two-way road, that it's not just you asking the other person. You may want to think about how you can add to that person as well, how you can facilitate the life of that person. I'm not saying that that's easy, but it's one way. So hackathons to find mentor, it's a great option there.
Yeah, and with a lot of these, as you're saying, a lot of it comes down to networking as well. By doing these different types of things, you're interacting with other people, you're getting to know other people that are active in the industry and who are already there. And I think that side of things doesn't get enough attention, and it's such an important part of it all.
And as an experienced professional, Kevin, you know how important it is to develop your network. I'll tell you this: I just helped a friend about a week ago because I know a lot of people in the industry. I said, hey, I know a company that is looking for the skills that you have, and I connected them. So super important, super valuable, and the mentor can have a big role on that for you, on that for anyone.
And so when we're doing all this, obviously, this is one of those things that is really hard to do early on, is to get that experience and having different avenues to do that. Because I think what happens is people sit there and they get stuck on their own. They go, how can I get experience outside of it? So right away, we've sort of outlined a bunch of things here that can help people out and maybe at least give them a little spark to get going in the right direction. But would there be anything else that people could be sort of looking at or thinking about when they're trying to set the stage for themselves to be able to get that first job?
So at Bridge, we have this 3 pillars theory or framework, you may call, which are 3 different aspects that you need to take care to make sure that not only you get your first job, but you keep getting jobs as well. You keep getting, you set your career in a trajectory that jobs will no longer be a problem for you. So we mentioned quite a lot here about the experience pillar. And usually I call this the confidence pillar, because how do you get confidence? Well, you don't learn to be confident. You become confident because you experience things, because you did that many times. So we talk quite a lot about the confidence pillar, but there are 2 other pillars as well that I briefly mentioned about them. Another one is the connections. Building your connection, building your network. There are ways to do that. You can think about meetups. You can think about, I mentioned as well, hackathons as a way to start building your connection. You can think about LinkedIn, and there are a bunch of strategies that you can apply within LinkedIn. So connections is the second one. And the third one is the content. Content is really building your digital footprint. It's doing things like, as I mentioned before, contributing to open source, that now your profile has a consistent flow of activities during, let's say, a few months to a year. So that is building your digital footprint. Another way to build your digital footprint, blogging. You may say, oh, Aderson, but I don't have anything to write about. I don't know how to write. Guess what? Nobody is born knowing those things. And you can easily get started on that just by sharing what you are learning. Again, this is just one simple story. So the 3 pillars really that I'm talking about: confidence, connections, and content. Once you build those 3 pillars and start to work, well, you don't get to a point that you build all of them. You work on them. It's a continuous effort that you put forward. But the goal is not only you get your first job, but jobs will no longer be a problem for you. Actually, you're going to be shut down your LinkedIn profile because you had enough of recruiters going after you. That's the goal.
And I think that's something everyone would be really excited about, definitely. And just to rewind just a second there on writing about what you're learning, that's something I'm always recommending to people all the time. And you'll understand and learn more by writing about what you're learning. It sounds silly because you're like, I learned it, so I know it now and I can write. And it just, the light bulbs that go off when you're trying to explain something, it's an enlightening experience. And I think even that, as you said, so, I mean, for that, it's an amazing thing on its own, but that increases your digital footprint. That helps you make your networking, and it sort of connects, all 3 pillars sort of they stand on their own, definitely, but there's definitely sort of an interconnectedness between them. So yeah, some really good advice there.
And that's the fact that you're writing about it. That's what I usually call, Kevin, double learning. You are learning whatever you thought that you learned, but you are learning deeply. Yeah. You are learning it again, because now when you have to convey to someone else, either verbally or in written format, what you have learned, you're going to say, oh, but I'm not sure about this. Then let me go back there. So you are learning deeply that subject, that topic, So again, double win there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. The amount of times I've made a connection to something else because I was verbalizing it, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, yeah, that's why that happens. I get it now. And you're not even on that specific subject or something, but it's amazing the extra learning you can get from that. I like that double learning. That's a good way to put it. So we've sort of scratched the surface a little bit on this, and I think that, for already it's giving, hopefully, the people listening a good idea of how they can get started and start diving in and digging deeper into these different things, and have little ideas and are motivated to start working on these different things. But if they want more information on anything or a deeper dive into these topics, where can they find out more?
Perfect. So Kevin, usually on a bi-weekly basis, we have a webinar that we go into those three pillars in way more details with really in a very pragmatic approach, a very practical approach. What should we do with, connections? Okay, so you do this, and that. What could you do to enhance your content, to enhance your confidence, to enhance your experience? So we go in a lot more details within an hour webinar that we have. So every other week we have one of those webinars. And for the people watching this video, Kevin, for your audience, you can go to brridge.com/Kevin, and you're gonna see the next webinar. You can sign up for the webinar. It's a free webinar. Again, I will be giving a lot more than in our limited time right now. But again, brridge.com/Kevin, bridge double R.
Awesome. And the link for it to be down in the description as well. And yeah, so for anybody who is looking to sort of be preparing themselves, so they're going to be ready to land that first job, and you'd like more information, I definitely recommend that you check it out, and just, go through and see. And for me, the real value in something like this, and as we sort of talked about really early on, you gave that idea of a recipe, and it's, instead of just having all these ideas floating around, it's having a structure that you can follow. And, because I think that's always the most frustrating thing, is when you hear, you might read a blog post or something, and it just, here's the 10 things that you should do, and each one has a 1 sentence or 2 sentences about it. And it doesn't give you the context or sort of the foundation that you need to implement that, or to really get the most out of it. Maybe not implement it, but to get the most out of it. And having a more structured way about going about it all, I think helps most people out.
Exactly. It's the difference between telling what to do, but also how to do it. And not that this is the only formula. You can improvise, you can change that, but at least you have one recipe that you can start cooking with, that you can start moving forward with that,
Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you so much for jumping on for this and your time on this one. And as we said, if you want more information on it, check the link down below for when the next webinar will be running. If you want to dive in more with Aderson. And yeah, thank you very much for coming on. Is there any closing thoughts or any other things you'd want to mention before we go?
I'm always open for connections, so connect with me on LinkedIn, Aderson Oliveira. Just find me on LinkedIn, connect with me, and I'm open for a chat there for a good conversation, okay? For anyone. Thanks so much, Kevin, for having this opportunity here.
Awesome. Thank you again. So I really hope that's given you a few ideas on different things you can start putting into place right now. And as he said, if you'd like to jump into one of his webinars to get a lot more in-depth information on that, the link to that is just down below. And with that, a really big thank you to Randy and Stuart, who are my supporters of Awesome over on Patreon, as well as all my other patrons for their monthly support. And of course, until next time, don't forget to make your corner of the internet just a little bit more awesome.